And we're live again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to one more episode of Dojo Live, connecting experts like you. And this is your host, Carlos Ponce, broadcasting from somewhere in the world because I'm kind of in the move today. But anyway, it's always a pleasure to have here, as ever, my fellow teammate, Nearsoftian, Tulio Siragusa in LA.
Hey.
Hi, Tulio. It's a pleasure to have you here, as ever, Tulio.
It's great to be here, trying to stay cool in this heat wave we're having.
Excellent, Julio. And also, of course, I gotta be grateful for having Paulette Fernandez here. She's broadcasting from our Hermosillo city offices. Right, Paulette? It's a pleasure to have you here as ever, Paulette.
That's correct. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hi. And, last but not least, we're going to be speaking with Mr. Jacob Taylor. Jacob is CTO and co-founder at Kauna. So he's gonna tell us all about Kauna in a minute. But for now, Jacob, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here as well on this edition of Dojo Live, connecting experts like you. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
Thank you, Carlos. It's a pleasure to be here.
Same here. All right. Well, Jacob, I'd like to start off can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Kauna, and then I'll pass it on to Paulette to continue the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, at a high level, I fell in love with computers at an insanely early age and started working on data platforms when I was in college and just haven't stopped. So I helped, I did my artificial life master's thesis for impact events, went to SEC, console, built 250,000 servers from a web browser, and then went to Octane and Epiphany and built scalable CRM, went to Sugar CRM, started all over, built far more scalable CRM, and then ended up wanting to have a conversation at scale with individual people. And that's Kauna.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
That's really interesting. Can you tell us about how the ideas for Sugar, CRM, and Kauna evolved from? I mean, how did you identify that problem and decided to do something about it?
Yeah, Sugar CRM was interesting because if you put yourself back at around 2003, 2004, Salesforce had kind of appeared out of nowhere, right? They'd been building their product for a while, but they suddenly got to the point where people were actually willing to swipe a credit card. So now, I'm working at a CRM company that takes multiple people to deploy, lots of training. It's a great product, but it's also, it's a very different conversation than, hey, why don't you swipe your credit card and we'll give you the next month for free. And that's kind of what Salesforce is coming up with, and just sort of coming up behind Epiphany and taking away the lower end customers and always climbing to bigger ones. And a couple of us were at Epiphany, and we're like, well, if they're doing that, can we do the same thing to them? And so we actually went and built Sugar. And I think the initial response, one of my favorite quotes is, does the world really need another CRM product? I think we were one of 85 CRM products when we first put our code on SourceForge, and we became the second most popular project within 6 months. And then,
awesome.
So the goal of CRM when we started Sugar was to get people to use it. People weren't complying. So we made it a little bit whimsical. We put in golf shots, and we put in some simple games and just make it a little bit fun, nice themes you can have. And that got people using it, but I was really surprised by what happened next, which is I'd call a company and they'd say, oh, hi, Mr. Taylor, can we put you on hold while I review your account? I might have had a yes, no question. I really wanted to know why I didn't get the order today and have them say to me, oh, it's coming tomorrow. And that's exactly, putting people on hold to review a lot of information is exactly the opposite of what I was trying to achieve. And also CRM typically treated forms as leads and not human beings as leads. And that's really the genesis of Kauna, is let's track people as people that have devices and have relationships, as opposed to lead forms, and allow kind of that billion user level conversations to happen accurately and feel like a more personalized experience for everybody on the other end.
Great. So Jacob, I think your topic today was SaaS for marketplaces, delivering highly personalized experience for buyers and sellers. How does Kahuna fit into? I mean, it's a pretty busy and crowded marketplace. Everyone's trying to deliver some kind of marketing automation, some kind of personalized solution. How is Kahuna powering up this, and what kind of partners can benefit from your platform?
Well, we definitely have kind of come in, initially we started in kind of the marketing automation space. Let's talk to people as people, like I was mentioning. And we've gotten a lot of success in marketplaces. So we have 7 of the #1 marketplaces in the world. So we've got like the #1 retail in South America. We've got the #1 like restaurant, it's OpenTable and Yelp in South America. And we've got like, I don't want to mention names because I don't want to forget anybody. We have the tops in Malaysia and Singapore, and I think one that's in Scotland, but also hails from Singapore somehow. And basically what we figured out was the people that were really leveraging our stuff and getting the most value from it were marketplaces. But when we dug deeper, it's marketing to people who are buying stuff from you is marketing automation. Nobody was really addressing the other side. How do I talk to my sellers? How do I encourage them? How do I understand what they need? And that's really kind of what got us more interested in kind of doubling down, because our customers needed a solution. It was very important to their business and to them personally. And there really wasn't a good solution there. So we basically kind of narrowed down and focused and built more around keeping your marketplace growing.
Interesting. So your focus is more on the supply side versus the demand side. Is that accurate?
It's both. We're just building the tools that a marketplace needs. Our dashboard gives you a very, very quick view of how well your marketplace is doing across the board. And that's something we couldn't have done as just kind of buyer marketing.
Right. I'm always curious to find out, what was that moment that said, man, we need this, it's missing. Can you walk us through that? What was that experience like?
I mean, so in terms of Kahuna overall, or?
Yeah, in terms of Kahuna.
Yeah, I was literally.
What gave birth to this idea?
I was running the internal implementation of Sugar CRM and sales ops, and was working with kind of marketing and sales and talking about, and lead gen, what's a qualified lead. And at the time, every time you filled in a form, you became a qualified lead. So I literally went in, filled in 2 forms back to back, and became 2 leads. And at that point, it's like, okay, we need to redefine our terms, and we need to also make this a more personalized experience. Like, for instance, if I were to leave my job, you still have a relationship with me, even though I'm not at the company. And I still have a history of being there, even though I'm not there now. So it's kind of like that, what do you do with old email messages, right? Do you delete them or disassociate them? Or do you find some way to kind of carry forward? And basically, at that level, it was treating people like people was important to me. And I think I expected that to give a nice leg up to CRM and the effectiveness of CRM. And I also built a system that with 4U of rack space could power 3,000 concurrent users with 99.9% sub 1 second. Well, that's enough to power IBM, which raises the next question of, how do I get this to massive scale? And the answer of, oh, I'll just buy like 6 more servers wasn't very sexy for me. I wanted to get to 1 billion people or multiple billion people. And that also was kind of cloud scale, cloud reliability, cloud deliverability, and elasticity for something like a CRM product. And in fact, we have several of our customers, we are their CRM product. And they're evolving markets, and we have a better view of the people using their stuff than they do.
So to accomplish that, what kind of tech stack did you invest in? Or what approach are you taking? Or are you using any Microsoft tools or open source? Can you share that with us?
So right now we're all on Google Cloud Platform. I was one of the first users between Sugar and Kahuna. I built some scalable stuff and did some data analysis on Google Cloud Platform, got comfortable with it and familiar with it. And then when it came time to kind of reboot and drive Kahuna forward, it was a natural thing for me to work with, because I knew the people, I knew the product, and we basically just kept building from there. I think one of our first customer on Tuesday, I think, said, we're shipping on Friday, come in Thursday and we'll integrate you. So I had 2 days to build a server, and we did. And then we integrated it and they shipped, and it was fun. It was like a good way to bootstrap.
Sounds like a very open, flexible system. I'm curious about the science. Are you using any specific AI or machine learning methodologies? Can you share that with us? What's working for you?
So there are definitely a lot of them in Kahuna, and one of the most powerful ones, ironically, was counting. People are like, what kind of machine learning do you do? It's, we count. Well, how do you make decisions? Like, we count at scale. It's actually not a very easy problem to do. If you get 50 million people hitting a link at the same time, how do you increment the number of people that hit the link? How many servers do you need? How do you make sure you count everybody and not too many people? And some of that's gotten a bit easier over time, but that really was kind of our first, I'd come up with a hypothesis or somebody else would, and we try and see, how elegantly and efficiently can we get this information and make this decision better than it was ever being made before. And then since then, we've moved on to machine learning. For instance, if you add some items to your shopping cart and you walk away, how long should we wait? When are 98% of the people that were going to check out anyways are checked out? And then we kind of game the system from there. It's like, okay, we got up to 5 different messages. We've got, different for each channel. We have lots of channels. How and when and with what device should I reach out to you personally to get you to complete your cart? And with that, we've got the neural networks and machine learning to kind of decide what the delay should be. We have kind of exploratory ranges. So expensive products, you could take a week or 2. Inexpensive products, it should be within minutes to hours. And then we'll basically figure out the best time with the best message and the best channel for you. And we'll hit you on the platform that's most likely to get you to complete the deal. And what that means is you're on a train browsing on your iPhone, you get home, we're going to notify you on your iPad that your shopping cart's still there and you might want to review it and check out. And that actually gets a very hefty uplift in the number of sales.
So your system's building dynamic trees, decision trees? Is that how it's working? And I'm oversimplifying.
That's the past history. A lot of our newer stuff is based on, it's implemented in TensorFlow on Google Cloud Platform. And we're basically finding, we find a problem where we can get data, usually it's data from within Kahuna and also third-party data that's public information. And we feed that in and create a model that will say, like, for instance, one of my favorites is, as you're typing an email message that you're going to send out to your customers, it scores you in real time. So it says, you know what, this is going to suck. This way, it's going to suck. You may not want to go there. And in fact, I think it actually literally says phrases like that. Is this your best work? Or please don't hit send. It's got a little bit of whimsy to it. And basically we give a bar graph. How good is it? Is it terrible? Is it kind of okay? A little better than okay? Or is it great? And that's a combination of how you do in your industry and how that specific one, works as far as your company goes. And that's helped a lot. And if you're confused and you're saying, well, why do you rate this lowly? You can click a button and see, this phrase and that phrase are terrible. This phrase is good. And it gives you an idea of kind of where should I spend my time to get a better job. So the hope is that, junior marketers at midnight that are all alone won't be losing their jobs because they sent out a bad message.
It's amazing how fast technology evolves. I mean, 2-3 years ago, dynamic trees were great. Now it's like a thing of the past. Just blows me away how fast things move. Paula, I think you had a question.
I did. Jacob, I think this is really interesting what you said about data analysis. And I would like to know, do you follow any other methodologies to validate any ideas that you implement in your product?
Yeah, actually, the product, we spent a long amount of time on making sure the data quality was high and that when you send a message to somebody, that message is as accurate as possible. Like in the message earlier, I wouldn't want to give somebody a 20% coupon to complete their cart 5 minutes after they finished. So our profiles are updated in seconds. We traffic shape based on what is important to you. So if you set up a new campaign that's triggered on something that you never really cared about before, we'll actually change the way that the clients call us to emphasize that campaign and make it more successful and more accurate. What was the, sorry, I got lost there. What was the question?
Yeah, I mean, how do you gather that feedback from your users? How do you validate that?
Yeah, so obviously we can track things like, open rates and click-throughs, which is nice. And we can kind of look at industry standards, which we're, well aware of. We also, every campaign supports a control group. So you could say, you know what, send it to 95% of people, don't send it to these other 5%. And over time, we'll watch, how many times do they click? Exact same metrics that we have from the email. How many times do they click? How much do they uninstall the product? how many times did they say, don't email me or don't push to me ever again? And we compare. And a lot of times, we've had messages that decreased the amount of uninstalls and decreased the amount of times people would click don't push me. So it's actually like, not only is it not a bad thing, so because people kind of don't want to be pushy, right? So, in this case, it wasn't even a bad thing. It touched their users, and those people stayed around longer, which is awesome to see. And then kind of in the background, we have the ability to do a global control group, which is like take 5% of your people, and we'll just watch them, and we'll compare everything against them. And that's given us, it's as fair as I can be, to the point where we even like double check right at the time they should be getting an email or we should be sending the push. Does this person still qualify? So it's exactly what we do with the normal users.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Guys, we have a question from one of our guys at the company. He's asking me right here on Slack, and the question is coming from actually from one of our teammates, Fausto Guerrero, and Fausto is asking, Jacob, what would you consider a leapfrog moment for your company in the markets you serve?
Great question.
That is a great question. I think, we try and build things that people are looking for. Starts with what they're asking for, and then frequently we kind of diverge a little bit into what we think they really want. I think, we've had a couple, and generally speaking, if the demand for your product, people responding to your marketing and asking for demos and coming to your homepage, when that goes through the roof, you've kind of hit one. I think with marketplaces, that actually puts us, SaaS for marketplaces, it puts us in it as a platform that is pretty not comparable. We're like Salesforce.com for marketplaces. And that model has really hit well. We've also had times where we basically said, okay, we think this is a feature people are going to love, like the cart abandonment timer that I mentioned earlier. It's for anything where you have a time delay and you still have a goal. We built it. We went out and had lunch. We built it, we deployed it, went out and had lunch, and then after lunch, we were going to talk about, how do we explain this to users? What kind of messaging should we use for it? During lunch, one of our customers found it, used it, and made $18,000, over $18,000 while we were still at lunch. So that's something where people see it and say, yes, I need this, and start working with it on their own. Obviously we don't want that. So now that we're figuring out more people. But for me, that's like an aha moment. If they see it and say, yes.
Well, I have to say, I love the feature where it proactively will say, you really want to send this? I think that's awesome. And it's definitely needed. Carlos, any other questions from the audience? Is it time to activate our chatbot? Who's activating the chatbot today?
It is. I think Paulette is activating. Well, you are activating.
No, it's our special guest.
Jacob is doing it. All right, there it is.
He learned pretty fast.
That was quick. That was quick.
dojo.live. That was super fast. Well, he's got a fast system. I mean, so like it's predicting already what I was going to do. It didn't even have to hit the button.
Yeah. It was so fast that it came through before you hit the button, right, Tulio?
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Cool. So, guys, if you have any questions for Jacob, just go to Twitter. You know how to use Twitter, so go to @dojo.live, ask a question. We'll read it back right to Jacob, and he'll respond right here, live and on the spot. Okay, with that being said, I pass it on to you, Tulio, or Paulette. Do you have any other questions for it?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the open source software. I would like to know, what have you found that works and what doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's kind of like any product. I found people that want to open source something for their benefit, and then the question I'd have is, well, what's in it for the people that are adopting it and maintaining it? And really, if you have a product that provides compelling value, they'll come in and work on it, and they'll extend it in the corners. They'll translate it. Like Sugar, we basically, after I think 3 months from first line of code to GA of 1.0 and funding, which was just an insane time, and people were like, I thought translations we had 6 months, and pessimistic locking to make sure two people don't modify the same record, we had about 2 weeks. Well, it turns out that was exactly opposite. And in fact, we never did pessimistic locking. It just wasn't a problem. But we had a lot of the community around the world saying, hey, you know, I want to do this in Spain. You know, can I translate it? And, you know, I basically said, okay, you know, we're going to get this done in 2 weeks. And they're like, oh, that's fine. Whenever you do, we'll translate it again. So they actually translated all of the strings from within the source code. And then, true to their word, the day we shipped language packs, that night, they shipped an updated retranslation. So it's like, you know, once you get to the point where people love it and they want additional stuff, they're very happy to work with you and build stuff. But you have to have compelling value. It could be simple, but it has to be compelling.
Awesome. So I have a few more questions, but before we go there, you said something earlier when you introduced yourself about your thesis. Now, we've talked about AI a lot in the past few years, but your thesis was on artificial life. Can you share a little bit about that? Just kind of shifting gear a little bit. What is that about? That's kind of interesting.
So it was definitely, I mean, my master's degree is in AI and artificial life. I was very interested in kind of the algorithms and was working on those. And I took a graduate class on artificial life forms. And, you know, like we were going around, like listening and thinking, okay, this is really cool. This is what I want to build. That's a cool project. And we're going around the room and somebody's like, I want to make a creature that goes towards the light. I want to make one that hides. I want to make one that can hunt food. And I'm like, I want to evolve pack defense and pack hunting and artificial life forms. And everyone's like, what the hell is wrong with that guy? It took a little bit longer than the 9-week course. I actually spent a couple of years on it, but it was pretty amazing. So what I did was I basically, I put in plants and randomly scattered them. I put in prey, which were eating herbivores, and I put in carnivores. And I hand coded the algorithms, and I'm looking at it. It's like, oh, this is pretty good. You know, it's like, I think I did it's a decent algorithm to start with. And then I turned on evolution through their neural networks instead of just using a normal function. The second generation ever from a cold start didn't die. They actually were so successful as editors, they repelled negatives, and that's how they actually finally died. And from then on, it was like, how do I give them just the slightest chance of surviving? So if they do, you know they're going to be incredibly awesome. And I have seen pretty much any form of predation I've ever read about, and also evading predation that I've ever read about coming through these algorithms. So maybe the predators will stay on the food, and when the prey go to eat, they're eating the ones that are further to the outside. But at some point, they get so hungry they have to try it, or vice versa. They're on the food, and the predators are circling, and then they close in simultaneously. They made it so that like the highest level was you need five predators to attack one prey at the exact same time, or nobody gets any food. And with that kind of a model, I would either get things that are voracious predators that are beautiful to watch, or things that would just sit there and spin in circles because there wasn't enough signal for them to learn. But that was kind of a the evolution of that was pretty creepy. How fast it could grow and how quickly the levels go, the iterations. That was around the time the Matrix came out. So in the Matrix, the computer took over everything, and then I would go home and just keep making my little bots smarter, all disconnected from the network.
You're scary brilliant, dude. That's awesome stuff. Now, I'm curious. Your company is now a post-Series C, so obviously you've had success. You're proving the product, and you're growing and expanding. What's keeping you up at night now, Jacob?
Oh, my last project was shipped recently by another company, which is interesting, right? It's like basically it's what keeps me up at night is it's a compelling enough trend that it's worth a lot of money. And we have a nice leg up, but that's really it. If Google decides to put 10,000 engineers on it, that's going to be really difficult. I could still do it, but it's going to be really difficult. And that's really where kind of we need to be, is as streamlined as possible and understanding what customers need and figuring out how to use the product and how well it's working for them, and then building things as efficiently as we can and making them scalable and stable and all those other fun things.
So Jacob, you've been very successful as an entrepreneur several times over. Any advice for any other up-and-coming CTO? How do you stay ahead of the game? How do you keep that competitive edge?
I mean, that's basically, that kind of what I was alluding to just a second ago, which is figure out the most elegant way you can get something done. And I don't mean like, mathematical purity and detailed model. I mean, if counting and dividing is going to get you 90% of the way there, that's all you do for now. And when you need that extra 10%, you absolutely go back and change it. And that gives you a lot of flexibility. It also means you can crank out new features. Like we were shipping, like a couple of years ago, we were shipping 5 to 7 times a week. And a lot of those were customer-facing features. So like that cart abandonment timer, they just see it in the UI and go, hey, this is cool. I'm gonna give that a shot. The other thing that I would say is any idea you have, any project you think is going to be successful, people are going to tell you no. Does the world need another X? And I think passion and capability and drive and basically a desire to satisfy customers and grow things, that's kind of what keeps me going, late into the night. And if there's a market there, ignore the 98% of the people that are going to say no. Like Sugar CRM, and I remember meeting all these VCs, and a lot of them would either say it's a great name, or they would laugh at it. And one of them's like, kind of laughing and saying, "Why did you name it Sugar CRM?" And the response was like, "You either say yes or you say no, but you always remember you met with Sugar." So find things that work for you and line up with where you want to go and with your customers and leverage the heck out of them.
That's great advice. Thanks, Jacob. If you were looking at your company from the outside in, what advice would you give yourself?
It's an interesting question. I like this. I think it's basically the way things are packaged and the features we have. As we're moving into marketplaces, we need more. Our customers need more help in a few areas, and that's where we're focused. But from the outside, you don't really see that, if that makes sense.
Great. Well, it's amazing how time flies when you're having a really good conversation. I have only one last question, and then I'll leave it for Carlos or Paulette to come up with any more. Any words of wisdom you'd like to share with us? Lessons you've learned over the past couple of decades being an entrepreneur?
So in addition to kind of do things as simply as possible, one of the things that I basically tell every single team member I ever hire is, it's not, are you going to screw up or take out production? It's what do you do after that happens? That's what you're judged on, because it happens. It's not the nicest thing in the world, but people will hunt for security vulnerabilities, including employees, which is not quite fair. But it's like things go bump in the night. Big customers threaten to sue you because you're near their market or for patents. There's all kinds of stuff that will come at you, and you just need to kind of stay calm. You expect when you start a company that things are going to break, and you need to make sure that your employees expect that as well, so that when there's 5 different things going on, all negative on the same day, you guys can still eat, and you're going to make it through the other end.
Well, thank you, Jacob. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We can talk for hours. I think Paulette's going to wrap it up with another question. Paulette? Oh, no, you're good. Okay, great.
Okay. Well,
I just quickly want to say, Carlos, it sounds like you have a really cool culture, encouraging to take calculated risk and encouraging to recover from the errors, not so much focusing on not making errors. I think that's wonderful, and it's a pleasure talking with you, and it's a pleasure to know that there's other people out there that are willing to do that and give employees an opportunity to learn from those things. Thanks for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, the only, I got something else. Well, one final question before we wrap it up. And Jacob, if you were to, let's say, to fast forward 5 years from now, are there any predictions you would like to make about the software industry and your product specifically?
So I definitely think that artificial intelligence is going to play a more and more important role. If you look at connected devices, there's the things you do with them, and then there's the kind of what am I implying by the fact that I've changed my pattern. And you're going to see more and more that actually working. And I think kind of like that 60% of the solution thing is getting easier and easier to do. So it's getting to the point where, we can actually make decisions based on the behaviors that the individuals, has and how individuals react to campaigns. So I expect to have, stuff on my end filtering the incoming messages and reprioritizing it. You already kind of see that a little bit in Google's Gmail filtering, which is awesome, that capability. Because what I think is good and bad is very different than what another person might think is good and bad, and they handle that, very well. There's a lot of technologies that you can just plug and play. Like you can say, hey, what's in this photo? And you get back a list of things that are in the photo, and that's awesome. Like I've done face matching at scale, and that was not something that I could have done, while I was at school, for instance. The systems didn't exist for it. So I would say basically more and more capabilities will be out there, and there'll be more and more intelligence kind of filtering what you see, because we're going to need it.
Thank you so much, Jacob. And I think that's all I have for now. I mean, more things might pop up in the future, but most likely we're going to be in touch. So, Tulio, got anything else before we wrap up, or Paulette, for that matter?
No, I'm good. It's just been a pleasure. I look forward to staying in touch. I'm curious to learn a little bit more.
Cool. Well, Paulette?
I'm just the same as Tulio.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, guys, as ever, it's been a pleasure to have you here. And before we go, I'd like to make just a quick announcement about next week. Next week, we're going to have here on Dojo Live, our guest for next week is going to be Mr. Angel Jones, the CEO and founder of TrueFable. TrueFable is a DevOps cloud-native security company with a focus on reducing the costs of DevOps while securely streamlining cloud application deployments. So that should be interesting. Highly technical, so there's going to be a lot of food for thought for that one. And it's going to be, again, Wednesday, 1 Pacific, 3 Central. And with that being said, the only thing left for me to do, thank you, Tulio, thank you, Paulette, and especially our guest, Jacob. It's been a pleasure to have you here. And, well, you're going to tell us where we can ship our tokens of appreciation. It's I'm sure you're going to like it. It's a small thing, but something to remember us by. So, Jacob, it's been a pleasure, and it was an honor to have you here on Dojo Live, connecting experts like you, Jacob.
Thank you. You guys have been awesome.
Thank you so much, and see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.